Welcome to White Pill Radio, the roughly every other episode version of Theology on Air, which is an outgrowth, of course, as you know, of Theology by the Pint, which you need to learn more about by going right now to theologybythepint.org, and you can come to our events. Learn about our events once a month, usually. Got some craft beer, interesting conversations, theological conversations, moral, political, philosophical, all that good stuff. Theologybythepint.org. But we can't cover everything in our live event, so we have a podcast, which you're listening to right now. It's called Theology on Air. And about every other episode is White Pill Radio, and I like to say that this is our post-apologetic, ultimately hopeful, applied theology where we look at current news and world events from a Christian worldview. And I like to say that this is blessed talk, but not happy talk. So we're going to try to put a positive spin on in the Christian worldview to really, all of the vexing things going on in the world today. So I'm Evan McClanahan. I'm the pastor at First Lutheran. Sarah, she's got a lot going on. She's going to be getting married soon. Congratulations, Sarah. So, so she's busy doing things with family, and so we're going to give her the night off. It's an unexcused absence in my. I don't.
She's earned it.
Family's not an excuse. You know what? I'm going to go full Elon Musk here and just say, you know what? I've had enough. I'm done. It's not good enough, Sarah. But whatever. You're the boss. So okay, who is with me tonight?
Hi, I am Josh Crawford. I am a bartending theologian from Dallas. I graduated from Perkins School of Theology with my Master's of Divinity. And can I just say that thank you for being here. You look beautiful. That outfit really matches your eyes. And Jesus loves you. Except for you, Ben.
Ben?
He knows.
Ben knows who he is.
Okay.
Ben knows.
Should
Hi.
I know? Is that an inside joke? What?
He comes to a lot of Theology on Tap, so
Okay.
maybe. I just
Not
know
Ben
he's
Shapiro?
going to be watching this episode.
All right.
Man, hopefully there's not some other random guy named Ben
It's
watching.
like, why doesn't Jesus love me?
I found that extremely offensive, guys. I don't think that's very funny. All right. Hi, I'm Ken. I'm an accountant. I do stuff at Theology by the Pint. So come to our next event, and I'll hand you a cup with some drink tickets in it.
Hey, I'm Cody. I teach at a local community college, and I'm on TikTok. Cody Pogue, CODYPOGUE.
It's the Cody and Ken Cam as well. Just saying, I invested in a new lens,
Yep.
so I can
nice.
Zoom in and out on
You have
this
depth.
camera now.
Field of depth.
Cool.
So
now.
I still OBS is kind of glitchy, and I don't know why. Whatever. So I need a producer. I need someone who understands this. I was trying to figure out how to do split screen today. Could not figure that out.
Huh.
Anyway, so okay, well let's dive in. There's a lot to talk about, this is this late breaking? This I guess came out a couple of days ago. This is an article about the 10 Commandments.
Local news.
So so that's yours, right, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, this one is pretty simple. For the past couple of while now, the Texas legislature has been trying to pass a bill that would require all classrooms in the state of Texas to have a poster, either donated or bought through district funds, displaying the 10 Commandments. And I don't know if there's much more to say about it. Like that's.
Well, you could say the 10 Commandments
That's good
are
or
awesome.
bad? Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree that the 10 Commandments are awesome. I was thinking a lot on the drive down here about what's the actual motivation behind this bill. It seems to me to be the government equivalent of a fish sticker on your bumper. It doesn't serve, to me, it doesn't serve any purpose. We all see those the I love Jesus bumper stickers, and I don't think anybody has ever actually come to Christ because they saw them. They were like, oh, I didn't know that, right? The only purpose of it is to signal your status within the in group.
Not necessarily.
Is there another purpose?
Yeah,
to it?
I think it could be. I think if every Christian put a fish on the back of their car, it would signal to those who are not Christian that they're in the out group. It would create a stigmatization of non-Christians.
Yeah. So I mean,
very mild.
you basically worded where I was going with this. Is I do think that is the purpose of this is to show anybody who is in a classroom who is not Christian that they are in the out group. I think that's really gross and disgusting. I don't think that has anything to do with what Jesus teaches us to do. I think we should be, Jesus says we will know each other by our love. That should be how we are signaling our in-group status. Jesus constantly calls out people who pray and fast in public as hypocrites who are accomplishing nothing except for excluding some and signaling their own status within the in-group. I think this is really gross. I think it has it's bad. It doesn't accomplish anything for the kingdom of God.
Well, you don't know that.
I was a youth pastor for a lot of years. I promise you, nobody is coming to Christ because of this. Nobody is going to feel empowered in their faith because of this.
Do you think the Ten Commandments should be on the side of a courthouse? Building?
No, it's a government institution.
Yeah. What's the basis of our law?
Mostly English common law.
Yeah. What's the basis of English common law?
Roman law.
Roman law. A lot of it
It would be biblical law.
A lot of English common law existed before it was Christianized. So
English common law is case law, right? So
yeah,
it's basically we have a case law system in America, right?
But why stop here? We could go older, like the Code of Hammurabia.
So we should have the
Is that
Code of
inspi-
Hammurabi.
the
in
Hammurabi.
in all of our classrooms.
Well, I'm not saying that because it's old. It's right. It's right because it's from God.
Well, no. You're saying what is the source of? What is the source of? What is the source of? And it's that's kind of the first law that we have encoded somewhere.
Well, yeah, but so what? I would ultimately our point of view is that if the Bible is the Word of God, and God said that there are, this is how to live, and obviously the biblical case law is not exhaustive, so you have to apply civil law as best you can to the modern world, and so that's what the purpose of case law is. And you have enough cases, and that becomes common law. Sure. That becomes precedent, and that's why, generally speaking, courts are hesitate to overrule precedented law,
Right. And at the end of the day,
you want to say something?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say I'm a little bit disappointed because this bill to do this, they debated it on a Saturday and passed it on a Sunday. So
they're not even following the same.
So it says to honor the Sabbath, and some people celebrate it on Saturday and Sunday, but both of them are broken in the process of passing the law.
That's such a good
kind of hilarious.
Actually, that does bring up a good point because the two tables of the law, right? Commandments 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, depending on how you number them. Deal with not taking the Lord's name in vain, no other gods, and honor the Sabbath. That's not the right order, but you understand. And possibly no graven images,
idols,
a subset of number 1. So hence the different numbering. But I would argue that may not be appropriate in in a classroom because those are more explicit, and even Christians have different points of view about the Sabbath. And what that means and what the Sabbath means and how you observe it and that sort of thing. Now, I do think that, generally speaking, teaching kids not to steal, lie, and, commit adultery and things like that is not covet. Good things. So, but let me say this. Let me try to meet you halfway. If there, would you agree that there's really no such thing as a worldview vacuum? Like there's no neutrality, right? There's no moral neutrality, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, there is a point of view that does exist. So could we create an ethical system that is generic enough where we agree with it and we put it on the wall in a classroom? Would that be possible, you think?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think most classrooms have, some kind of list of rules that they post up. There's a student handbook and all of that.
When you say we, do you mean everyone?
I
one set of rules.
Texas.
Okay, Texas. One set of rules that everyone in Texas must or follow if you get public funding, right?
Yeah.
This is public schools. Private schools do whatever they want.
By the way, there's a whole conversation as to whether this is violative of the first amendment, which I do not think it is because it's not establishing a state religion.
Well, yeah, it's not establishing a state religion, but it's definitely showing state preference, state backing for a certain religion.
Sounds good.
Two. I find religions.
Yeah, and
but if there's no moral neutrality, then that's inevitable.
I don't necessarily think so. You can have morals without a particular specific religious foundation for them. And my particular concern with this one is you mentioned,
name one moral without a religious foundation.
Most cultures, even apart from religion, agree that murder is generally bad, right? Generally agree that there is some kind of protection about your property, you can't steal it, right?
Yeah. Why is murder wrong though?
Because it harms people.
Yeah, I mean, again, right? Like my argument would be that like all life is sacred because it's imbued with the divine image, but there are ways to reason to that morality, right? That just like generally as a society, it's better if we're not all murdering each other, right? Like you don't have to be a Christian to get there specifically.
I don't know that I agree with that.
My main issue with
murdering might help get rid of all the weak people that are just dragging down the rest of society.
Yeah, but like generally we have. I mean, no, like I don't disagree. I don't agree with that at all. But like
you like having weak people in the society that drag us all down.
We're supposed to care for the weak. You know, like that's what God calls us to. We should have. You know.
Oh, so you would say like Revelation is like maybe like a foundation for morality,
right? But like the specific issue here, right, is like going back to that point that you made of it signals to people that they are in the out group. I don't think that does anything except for breed resentment and hostility amongst the people that we are ostensibly supposed to be showing the love of God to.
So you oppose like affirmative action? That definitely,
no,
that definitely placed, according to the Supreme Court, it definitely placed people in the out group. So, for example, when an Asian American applied to Harvard, this was the whole Supreme Court case that was struck down, you know, and they couldn't get in, even though they had better test scores than people of color.
No. Because
they were the out group.
Yes, they are historically made a part of the out group by American society, which is why affirmative action exists, is to help get them into the in-group, to integrate them into a system that has historically exploited them.
Yeah.
Like, but affirmative action doesn't make them a part of the out-group. It recognizes that in their out-group, and it takes certain steps to try to give them the benefits and privileges of the in-group.
Right. But it does privilege them.
Yes, because they have been historically disprivileged.
Yeah, so it creates more out-groups.
I don't know. It brings people into the in-group.
I said
like this is a great quote, right? Like that for people who have always been in power, equality feels like oppression.
Say that one more time.
For people who have always been in power. Yes.
Okay.
Who have been in the in-group, equality feels like oppression.
Okay.
Affirmative action does not create out-groups. It does not make like whatever you think the in-group is, white straight people,
I don't want to
marginalized.
Affirmative action, but are you saying it does not or it cannot?
I think generally it's not intended to.
Sure.
And I don't see any. I typically don't think that we have reached the point in society where it has reached the point where it's like making in-group people.
So it can, but it does not as of yet, is what your argument is.
Yeah, I guess that would be my argument. And, you know, it like either way, like I'm not as big of a fan of like affirmative action as I am of just like general DEI, like opening the pool to the largest number of people, giving as much opportunity to the largest number of people possible. I do see where like affirmative action might be abused.
Well, I think,
but like, I don't know. This is a bit of a rabbit hole.
Well, in group, out group. Somebody at Bethel Church.
Okay, hold on.
Wait a minute. I said I was going to propose
Yeah.
I was going to propose a more
universal,
value neutral, more generic code of conduct that maybe could be put on. So I want you to listen to each one of these and tell me what you think. So there's 7 of them. Number one should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason.
What is it? How are we defining in accordance with reason? I like that gets a little sticky, but generally I agree with it.
Okay, well, just you don't have to make any comment. Just think each one.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions.
Rapid fire, keep going.
One's body is inviolable, subject to one's will alone. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. Belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. And then finally, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought.
Is this like the Satanic Temple or something like that?
Yeah, I feel like there's a gotcha coming.
You recognized it.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a gotcha coming.
Yeah. Not the Church of Satan. They're weirdos that like Ayn Rand and
I stole that. I stole that from someone else and using that. And yet, so I'm glad
they got some good ideas.
Yeah, well, but it's a worldview, right? And it's a kind of comprehensive worldview that's listed that does have some things that superficially might sound good. Like, for example, they use the word justice.
The Satanic Temple are really, really nice trolls. Church of Satan's a bunch of weirdos, but the Satanic Temple are like the "I'm not touching you" of Satanism.
Yeah.
But
No,
okay,
they're awesome.
but my point is, of course, actually, I do favor the Ten Commandments being in schoolrooms. So I was being a troll myself when I said I didn't. But because the point is, because there is no moral neutrality, and so if we are a Christian nation, and we are, or at least we used to be,
I disagree with that.
You can either. Well, then, what kind of nation are we?
I think it comes back to, at times in our history, we have been a nation of mostly Christians,
Yeah.
but I don't think we've ever had a Christian government, right? The Constitution is very clear in not having a state church, no religious test for office, a lot of those sort of things. But yeah, throughout most of our history, we have been a country of mostly Christians, if that's what you're saying.
But
If they
when-
wanted to make us a
especially-
Christian nation, they did a terrible job of it.
But especially when it comes to matters of law, and that's what this is. If we are a nation that is a case law system, and we basically derived it from English common law, which I would say derives it from biblical common law. I mean, they weren't over there in England like, what did the Code of Hammurabi say again? No, that's what they were doing. They were. It was a Christian culture for over thousands of years, and what was their context for law? And so it was the Bible. And so basically, it's a case law system, and that's what we have. So especially on matters of law, now I think we've gotten away from that. And I think that's terrible, and I think we need to get back to that. But I will say again, I might meet you halfway on the question of things like Sabbath, or
No other, like
but some days I think maybe we should have blasphemy laws.
Sure, I was going to ask you because like the blasphemy
my
ones,
God.
like those are the ones that
I mean,
most
I do
people
love God,
right? But
And
also,
I hate it when he's dishonest.
also like
So we're
adults.
just doing Sharia law, but like the Christian version.
That's so
That's way
lazy.
different though.
That's so
Sharia
lazy.
law.
Is it?
Yes, it's extremely lazy.
What other nations have blasphemy laws right now?
Islamic nations.
Well,
I mean,
America did for
We used to.
a whole lot of our history, and I don't know that we're better off having gotten rid of them. But there have always been in Christian thought jurisdictions, proper jurisdictions. There are no jurisdictions in Sharia law. There really is no difference between mosque and state in Islam. In fact, one of the articles I wrote that
but for Christian history, there wasn't either, right? Spain had the Inquisition, and like I mean, blasphemy laws existed in Christian history too.
yes, thank God for the Reformation. Because that was exactly sacralism. And in fact, there's a big war right now on the Christian right now about the degree to which, because there are Christian nationalists who are out there arguing for Christian princes to, rise up and, take over from the Enlightenment frame, American government, stuff like that. Now, I reject that. I believe in jurisdictions. I believe in separate jurisdictions, that there are, political leaders who should be formed in a Christian worldview, citizens who should be formed in a Christian worldview, but political leaders and religious leaders. And yet, it's like, both of those people need to have a point of view. They have to have a moral framework.
Well, I guess like what's the purpose of asserting Christian supremacy like in the government or in the public sphere?
It's our worldview. It's our basis of law.
Right,
It's
but
our
like
basis
what's
justice
justice
and mercy. Are those important?
Yeah, no. I
Okay,
totally
so
agree
how
with
do you?
that.
So how,
But like, why
those are
does it need to be
abstract concepts.
specifically Christian, like specifically branded Christian, in order to accomplish those things? Like, what is the end goal of Christian nationalism? I guess.
The end goal of nationalism would be to prioritize the citizen of a nation over the citizens of the world, and I would fully be on board with that. The importation of Christian into that would be to say that if there is no moral neutrality and one needs to have a worldview, you have to land somewhere. So you have to say, are we a Christian nation? Are we a Muslim nation? Are we a secular nation? Are we an atheist nation? What are we? So
What about a diverse nation, a nation of people who have
nation
different ideas?
Of the people, by the people, for the people, right? Like that's,
yeah,
and I'm okay with those people being different.
yeah. So,
I think a lot of this is just lazy Christianity. It's like an attempt to be like, we're going to use the law to force people to be Christians exactly like us. And we know that God looks at people's hearts, and you can use the force of government to change people's actions. If I go out there and, I don't know, change my religion, the government's going to kill me, so I'm not going to do that. But that does nothing for my heart. And I think what Christians have done a lot of times is done this lazy, like, instead of going out and evangelizing and winning the lost and helping the poor and all the things Jesus says to do, we're like, we're going to take over the government, we're going to plant our flag, and we're going to force our worldview.
Well, speaking of flags, do you agree that pride flags should be in classrooms or no?
No.
Why not?
No. Not everybody's going to agree with it. So I think it's a distraction away from the educational process.
Would you agree with me? I mean, of course, I agree with you. Would you agree that the pride flag represents a worldview? I would argue it represents ultimate moral and ethical considerations and ultimately a religious point of view.
Yeah, I think the people who support it see it as we support you, that you're okay.
Yeah, you're welcome here.
You're welcome here, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's some people out there, surely, that's like, this is, we're forcing this on you or something. But for most of us, I think it tends to be much more of like, you don't have to be depressed. You don't have to kill yourself. We accept you just as you are.
Yeah.
That kind of message.
By the same token, like I'm not even chill with like come and take it flags or like the
Live for your
snake.
die.
No.
Don't
Don't tread on me flag. Yeah. Like I mean,
Gadsden flag.
the Gadsden flag. Yeah. If I saw a teacher with that, I'd be like, "What are you doing?" I like those, but like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I kind of don't like teachers pushing their specific worldview on students. I do, whether it's a rainbow or Ten Commandments, right? If you're going to go the rainbow flag with really, really, really young kids, like you have the issue of explaining to really young kids the same issue of like, do not covet thy neighbor's wife.
By the
What
way,
does that mean?
Yeah,
teacher?
yeah.
Covet thy neighbor's wife. What does that mean? And then you got to explain sexual ethics to a 3-year-old, which like you were not wanting to do.
Yeah. So actually, I'm far more radical than putting Ten Commandments in classrooms.
Yeah.
Like that's not nearly
What?
enough for me. Oh,
What?
that doesn't even scratch the surface of the Christian education I think public schools should be offering. We should go back to the New England primers, which is how we educated children for 200 years in this country. Where if you want to learn what the letter J is, you learn about Jonah. And if you want to learn what the letter A is, you learn about Adam and so on. Or just Google New England Primer and look at it. That's how you learn your alphabet by learning biblical instruction.
Hey guys, Sarah Stone here. Sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is a riveting podcast episode, but Theology by the Pint needs your help to continue providing these podcasts, offering our in-person events, and growing so we can bring thoughtful conversation and the hope of the gospel to a world that's increasingly walking away from church and from faith. Now that we're a 501c3 nonprofit, all donations are tax deductible, so we've crunched the numbers, and if each listener of this episode gave just $1 for each episode you listen to, we'd put a huge dent in our annual budget. So consider giving today. Go to theologybythepint.org/give and click the link to donate. Thanks so much, and now back to our show.
Because we're a Christian nation, see, and you have to choose. There is no more. There is
we're
no
not a
more
Christian
moral
nation.
neutrality.
You keep
What do you
saying
think?
that,
Pride flags in classrooms?
I haven't really thought about that.
Really?
One. Yeah,
Don't you
no.
understand that's why they're putting Ten Commandments in classrooms? This is the cultural war fight. This is it. That's why if they had never put pride flags and BLM flags in classrooms, this wouldn't have happened. By the way, this has happened now in Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas. They're all competing to be the most conservative.
It was
state.
happening before. That's what the Church of Satan people put in the like Baphomet statues were like trying to do.
Yeah.
This was way before like BLM and way before.
Generally speaking, public places and religious displays, yes, but Ten Commandments is pretty recent. I mean, it hadn't gotten through. I think Louisiana was the first, and then Oklahoma, and then Texas.
Oh, specifically in public schools.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking the whole Ten Commandments argument.
Because people were not happy with what they saw. I mean, it's a cliche, but during COVID, they didn't like the rainbow flags all of a sudden becoming everywhere. They didn't like, what was going on in public schools.
Yeah.
Do you think let me just ask it more basically. Do you think the pride flag represents a worldview? A moral considerations?
Oh yeah, I mean it absolutely represents the morality of life.
So it shouldn't be in
if
a-
you're
shouldn't be in a
gay,
classroom,
It's
right?
fine. You're loved and accepted and welcome.
Yeah.
I just don't like. I don't know why. I don't know why that's necessarily like a bad message for kids to have in the classroom.
Well,
but
I think it is
I
bad.
do. Like if
Forms an
having a
outgroup.
pride flag in there opens the doorway to like the Ten Commandments being in there, then like yeah, sure, just get it all out.
Yeah.
Now, what's a much thornier issue that I don't know the answer to is, let's say that you have a teacher who happens to be gay. Should they be able to put a picture of them and their spouse on their
Absolutely,
desk?
yeah.
Right.
Evan?
I want to say yes, but I know people who they send their kids to public schools and they don't want their kid at that age having those questions. And why, as much as I support that teacher's right, I also feel like that parent should have some kind of say on whether they have that conversation yet or not.
Okay, so if we want to take any pictures of anybody with their spouses out of the school, I'm
That's-
fine with that because you're
right.
raising the exact same
Yes.
questions there, right?
We're going to end up in some sterile, white, lifeless, dead school where we can't say anything because everyone's going to be offended.
Yeah, which is
How
which
about
I'm
we just
totally
have a
against.
robust Christian culture where we teach people the Bible? Sounds lovely. Okay, let's keep going. Speaking of teaching people the Bible, this is actually an article that Sarah passed on to us, but it's a quick one. It's from Protestia, which is a kind of growing website. I'm seeing a lot of their articles go viral. Anyway, they highlight some of the insanity going on in the church, and it's the highlight. The article here is Brandon Lake criticizes worship songs in church for having Christianese language like holy, holy, holy. This actually isn't that new of a criticism in the sense that there has been a movement, I would say at least 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 years, maybe forever in a certain manner of speaking, where people have always sort of said, if we're going to attract people, we can't use Christianese, which is like, in-group, language that the outsider doesn't understand. And so basically, who is Brandon Lake? He is the worship pastor of Seacoast Church, a 14,000-member, non-denominational, multi-site megachurch in South Carolina. I'd never heard of him or this group, but he's a songwriter. He used to be with Bethel, I guess, and he's making money, on these songs. I mean, these guys make, I don't know how much money they make on copyrighted music, but it's not nothing.
Quite a bit.
And so he put out a song recently called Hard Fought Hallelujah. And basically he's saying, here's the quote. It's kind of long, but I'll just try to read it. I think, by the way, I don't know if he was on drugs when he said this, but this is his grammar, so I'll just have to read it for you. I think, last thing I'll say is I'd love to see more worship sets, more churches, kind of keep Bubba in mind. Like, we call him Bubba, the guy who's in the back of the room, and he's he got dragged there by his wife. And I just don't know if when your opening song or the most of your songs have so much Christianese language, I think he has a hard time going can I sing that? I'm not there yet. I think he hears a song like Hard Fought Hallelujah, and I'm not saying hard fought is the answer, but I love like when your first song is Holy, Holy, Holy is the Lord God Almighty. I think he's going what does holy mean? Holy crap? What? I don't know. Obviously, that's where we want to get in worship set where it's just every eye is fixated on him.
One, I think that's an uncharitable,
All right.
cadence.
That's not how people speak.
Cadence to
Okay.
deliver. Two, I think if you wrote down any Trump speech, you wouldn't even have
just thinking
to.
that.
You
I
would
was
not
just
even have
thinking
to
that.
stutter that much.
Yeah.
You would not be able
It's
to
a total
logically
run-on
follow.
for 1 hour. I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, no,
Although
the
it's better,
literal
he's better about
transcription is
closing
wild.
thoughts before he goes on to the next one.
The pivot.
Yeah. No, the weave.
The weave. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, here's the thing. He has a song that he's saying you should sing hallelujah, which is literally a Hebrew word.
Yeah.
And he's but we can't say the word holy. And I'm going, well, isn't hallelujah a Christianese word? I mean, that's not a vernacular word. That's not a secular word.
Yeah.
So anyway, I reject I reject basically contemporary Christian music.
I
as
do
a whole.
too. I think it's an uncanny valley, right?
Okay.
Where it sounds way too much like top 40 radio. Either
But the
quite
bad
good.
version.
yeah, either give me old hymns or give me I don't know,
Death.
2018 Michael Gungor.
Facts. Yes.
But,
yes.
Wait. 2018 what?
Michael Gungor?
It's 5 years ago. Is that so old that it's
7 years.
Well, Gungor went off the deep
Yeah,
end.
before he. No,
I've never heard of him.
before he
Yeah,
went
he's
nuts.
wacky now, but his old stuff was really, really introspective.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there
thoughtful
there's
music
modern good hymns.
and experimental, but this uncanny valley that sounds just like top 40 that comes out of Hillsong, Bethel, Elevation. I do not like it. That is, we're gonna have a theology by the pint about
Yes.
smoke machines or salter. The whole So
Here, right across the way, I'll be arguing against contemporary Christian music in 5 days, and it was going to be a mini because Sarah didn't think anybody would show up. So she doesn't think anyone's interested in worship, and maybe she's right. But I'd love you all to come out and prove her wrong. It'll be in our sanctuary. We'll be playing the organ at the end. My son, in fact, will be playing the
Aw,
organ.
that's
how sweet.
Anyway, so this is the problem with this, desire to kind of appeal to the masses. You basically have to strip away everything You know, to get to a point where you're not saying anything offensive, and you're going to get to a point real fast. Like, say, Joel Osteen will never say the word sin. Like, he would definitely never say the word repent, right? So much of what passes for Christianity today doesn't even have Christian language anymore, and it's because we're afraid to offend. And I'm just basically at the point where I'm interested in reacting against that in the most linguistically violent way possible, and be like, hold my beer. We're going to sing holy, holy, holy.
Nothing but Christian.
We're going to sing nothing but holy, holy, holy for a year. And, you know.
Yeah, and I think this is a similar problem to what we have on the left. It's the word policing, where everything is about the words and not the heart of what we do. And I think it's really the heart is the spirit that matters. Words are words.
So my take is like, you know, a lot of my context comes from like the youth ministry world, right? Where I think in some settings, right, if you start going off about being covered in the blood of Jesus, right, like that, like you got to think about how that sounds to like somebody who brought their friend for the first time, and I think that there is like, let me put it this way, I think that generally the church is for believers, right? Like it should not, in my opinion, cater towards seekers and like, you know, trying to draw people in. At the same time, I think that the problem is not so much with the music, but with the way we engage the congregation with the music, right? So like if we use these songs as teaching opportunities, right, to like really talk to our congregations about this is what it means to say hallelujah. When we talk about the blood of Jesus, right? Like this is what we are talking about here, because there are probably plenty of Christians in the pews, right, who have just like heard Christianese their entire lives, never really had it unpacked for them, who sing it out of habit, but probably don't actually know what they're talking about. Right. And so I think I kind of understand where he's coming from, but I think the solution is wrong. Like the solution is to teach to address these as like teaching opportunities.
The solution is clearly to sing his copyrighted song.
Oh, for sure.
Called something hallelujah. No, I will say this, like in my preaching, I try to never speak in cliches. It's kind of hard to avoid sometimes. Like sometimes you just have to say the basic thing. That's a cliche. But, you know, like I will say that you can fall into a rut and people pick up on that quickly and they tune out. So you do that is part of effective communication. But when you come to, but music and hymnody especially has had 1,000 years of filtering process. Whereas this guy just showed up 5 minutes ago and now he's got some stupid hallelujah song, which is a super duper 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 biblical word. And he's like, yeah, but the other word is Christianese. It's, I don't know, it's like, it's kind of hypocritical, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think what to play devil's advocate for him, I think what he might be saying is that like the songs that are just like glitter pop Christianese that only say holy, 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 I love you, I love you, I love you.
Hymn, holy, holy, holy.
No, I know, and I don't think that's what he is saying when he's saying holy, holy, holy. I think, and if I'm playing devil's advocate for him, like it's about the normal elevation, like glitter pop, like hey, I love you, Jesus, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, like Elf, right? I haven't listened to Hard Fought Hallelujah. I'm going to after today, and I want to see if it's about like both the pain and the praise of Christian life. I would be fine because like my favorite hymn is
Built on a Rock.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, right? You got to have both, right? And that sounds like the title Hard Fought Hallelujah. It sounds like what that might be going for, but yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I will say there's a whole lot of not a lot of depth in modern CCM.
Sure.
I like to tell the story real quick. I knew someone, this is probably 10 years ago now, so 2015-ish, and she said, yeah, I don't attend this Baptist church because they do 1990s contemporary music. And I was like, that says everything about contemporary music that, you know, like you got to be on the cutting edge of contemporary. That's kind of weird, but okay. Well, this is a bit of a darker story, but Josh, I think this is yours, right?
Yeah.
This gets back to Luigi and U.S. Well, what is it? U.S. Healthcare? What is it?
United Healthcare.
United Healthcare. Yeah.
All right.
So give us a summary on this one.
So as I'm sure many people know. Was it last year or early this year?
It was this year.
A CEO of United Healthcare was murdered. And
Allegedly.
well, his murder definitely happened.
Okay.
But they caught a guy named Luigi Mangione who allegedly committed this act, and this sparked this cultural moment where a lot of people began to recognize the brutality and the violence, and I would say just sheer evil of our healthcare industry, and especially of the health insurance industry. Instead of responding with outrage to this murder, a lot of people, I think very understandably, were saying things like, "Sorry, thoughts and prayers. My thoughts and prayers were denied."
All right, get to the summary. So,
Right,
this guy was
right,
killed
right.
because U.S. healthcare.
Because of this systemic issue where they deny claims.
Yeah.
In order to make a profit. Every settlement that they pay out to people in need of health insurance is a loss of profits. And now BlackRock, who is a 10% stakeholder in United Healthcare, United Healthcare was obviously spooked, kind of changed their actions a little bit, and now BlackRock is suing them for providing too much care for their patients and not enough profit for shareholders. And I will just go ahead and read this last paragraph because I think it's titled "The System Working Exactly as Designed: The Rampant Denial of People's Claims and Denial of Healthcare. This isn't a bug in American healthcare; it's a feature. BlackRock's massive influence helped shape United Health into the claim denial machine it became. They voted on executive compensation packages that rewarded denying care. They approved strategies that provided shareholder returns over patient outcomes. But when public outrage threatens that business model, they don't pivot to supporting better healthcare. They sue to protect their right to profit from human suffering. And I don't think I need to convince anybody of how evil and greedy and messed up the insurance companies in this nation are, literally profiting off of the death of thousands, tens of thousands of American citizens. My main point in addressing this was to say that I really think that this is an area where I think the church could stand to be a little more vocal, right? We have seen through which we'll get to in a moment, the pro-life movement, right? That when the church really rallies behind an issue, they can make real political change. They can affect. They can really make a difference in this country, and I think that this is genuinely one of those issues that I think that the church should get behind. That we need better healthcare in this country. That we as a church should be decrying the sin and the greed of these companies. That we should be thinking about ways in which we can step in to care for those who are uninsured or underinsured.
I thought Obamacare was supposed to fix all this.
Of course not.
Well, it instituted an 80-20 rule, right? Y'all are familiar with the ACA 80-20 rule?
Yeah.
Which, they're not going beyond, right? Otherwise, that would be the article instead of
right.
They're mismanaging margins inside of the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule, for those of you that don't know, is that 80% of expenditures have to go to paying out claims. 20% is all that can be used for paying salaries or back office or data management. Every health insurance company in America has to follow that rule.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been a unintended side effect to that rule. So
Sure.
if I could just read this.
Go for it.
This is from... This I actually asked Grok to explain this to me, and so it quotes, for example, from the American Economic Journal. Applied economics, the MLR policy, that's the 80-20 rule that came from ACA, did not lead to lower premiums, but instead resulted in higher claims costs. insurers found it easier to increase medical claims rather than to lower premiums to meet the regulatory threshold. This could mean that insurers paid higher prices to providers or expanded coverage for policyholders, which in turn could have increased premiums. In 2025, ACA marketplace premiums have seen a range of changes, with most proposed premium changes falling between about 2 and 10.4%. However, the impact of ACA on premiums is complex and varied over time. AIEs. So, I think that at some point we have to sort of. I do have. You asked me something like in our group chat, like what I would do. So I do have a range of prescriptions, to offer.
Okay.
But before we get there, BlackRock is not a conservative, to be clear, champion. I mean, the populists of the world hate the BlackRocks of the world, hate them. BlackRock is one of the biggest hedge funds on earth. They're the people going around buying up single-family homes, turning all of us into renters. So, all the people that run them are the enemies of people like, say, Steve Bannon. So, meanwhile, what the Obamacare seemed to do is empower. I mean, it was written by the insurance companies. Literally, it was written by insurance companies. So it seems to. I mean, no one seems to be happy with it. Insurance premiums have only gone up. People are spending $10,000-$20,000 a year for insurance, and that's they're spending $20,000 to $30,000 a year for insurance premiums with a $10,000 deductible. So basically, unless they get hit by a bus, they don't have coverage, and that's how a lot of people are. I had United Healthcare, went through a whole fiasco with them, lost money, lost a lot of money. Even though my church paid, I think, I don't know, $20-something thousand a year for healthcare premiums, and yet when I needed them for a routine surgery, Now part of that is my fault. I wasn't a good consumer. You gotta you actually have to negotiate with doctors, which is something no one wants to do. That's what I learned. You have to negotiate. You have to be the person to say, how much is this going to cost? You have to basically make the hospital give you a menu. And if you do that on the front end, you'll be in much better shape. But none of us want to do that. And when they say, when insurance says it's covered, we think it's covered and paid for. That's not what they mean. To be clear, that's not what they mean.
And the prices going up is not unique to insurance. It's also the problem with government contractors, right? Where if there is a shield in between the payer and the payee that you can't see through, right? Like a curtain that makes prices invisible to the consumer that's actually paying for it, and the provider, well, you can charge whatever you want, right? Yeah. And same thing with government contracts, same thing with insurance. As soon as you get a middleman in there, you can start jacking up those rates.
And in healthcare, it's not one middleman. There's so many middlemen. There's probably 10 people, and I'm not exaggerating, 10 people or institutions between you and your doctor.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that any collusion between government and corporations, I think, is a bad thing, especially when these corporations, not just the health insurance industry, has proven over and over and over again that they would literally rather kill us if they thought we were more profitable to them dead than alive.
Yeah, but the same is true in single payer healthcare. I mean, if you look at what's going on with MAID in Canada right now, they're killing people. We had a whole article about this on the previous show, where something like 10% of all their deaths in Canada are assisted suicide. So the government will kill you. You think the government is compassionate? They'll kill you too because you're too expensive.
I did dig into those, and the vast majority were terminal, end of life.
Yeah,
right.
Like they were going to die within 3 weeks anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a little uncharitable.
There are lots of anecdotal stories.
NHS,
where someone is depressed, and they go to see the doctor, and they're like, "Have you thought about killing yourself?"
I think what we're really concerned about is rationing care, right?
Sure,
right. Absolutely.
Scarcity. Healthcare is a scarce resource.
If we decentralize the whole thing, it solves all that problem.
I also want to point out that another solution is to have more doctors. And right now we're cutting funding to all of our science programs, to our universities, to our research. But I do want to push back a little bit that you said nobody likes the Affordable Care Act. It's bad. I think it solved some problems. It left a lot of problems. I don't think it's perfect. That we need to make major changes. But there are things that I think it actually solved. If you're under 26, you could stay on your parents' health care. It made insurance affordable for, I think, people under $60,000, making under $60,000, especially if they have kids. It had a plan where it was supposed to help people under $10,000 on Medicaid, but of course Texas and other states rejected it. So I think there are things that it actually did well. It got a lot of people on insurance who were uninsured before. But it's not perfect.
Can I chime in?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, pushing. This is where the liberal and the leftists disagree. Here is no. I do think that we should go just straight for a single payer healthcare system. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be better than the current system, which I think by any metric it is.
I might try to appeal to everybody as the voluntarist in the room.
Let's go.
What is the church's answer? I'm hoping to provide a white pill radio type answer.
Yes.
Health
Thank you. We need one of those.
Health share programs. I really do like these Christian health share
Medishare.
programs. Yeah. Look into them because there's a bunch of sketchy ones, but some good Christian programs are actually trying to avoid the corporate culture.
Okay, so I looked into it. Here's what's crazy about it, and here's what freaks people out. When you get close to signing on the dotted line, they will basically tell you, we are not insurance.
Yep.
Because they can't use that word.
Right.
And they basically we do not provide coverage. Like that may not.
They
be
kind
what
of have
said.
to.
Yeah.
Legally.
They basically say we're not insurance, and basically we might leave you high and dry, and because we're not government regulated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now you have to basically trust them that your premium you'll actually get it back if you need it. So, but yes, I mean, I think that. I'm not opposed to insurance. Yeah. I think at this point though, if there would be a way that we could basically have catastrophic insurance for when we're hit by a bus and move to a cash system where you have a doctor that you pay to show up with a black bag at your house, everything would be so much more decentralized and so much cheaper. There's a lot of solutions that could be offered, but I think they're going to be very hard to come by. You know, I mean, I could say more, but yeah, I go. Want me to go through my list? Can I go through my list real fast?
Of what?
Of medical improvements.
That list would go on for hours.
Okay, that's okay.
There's so much that.
But I do think that what RFK Jr., for example, I think that some of the things he is doing are good. I think that if we just keep piling law upon law upon law, and the government just gets more and more and more involved in healthcare, it's not going to get cheaper. It's not going to get better. So, and to trust the government, I don't trust the government any more than I trust insurance. But by the way, here's a really cynical black pill take on this lawsuit. No one is happier about it than United Healthcare. This is classic lawfare. This is kind of how it works, which is this is how the left actually gets a lot of stuff done, which is friendly groups will file a lawsuit forcing them to do that thing that they claim to not want to do, but now they have to do it. So think about it. United Healthcare is giving too much money away. Well, if BlackRock can prove that United Healthcare, being a public company, has obligations to maximize profit to shareholders, and because they're giving too much money away, they can't maximize profit to shareholders. Therefore, BlackRock, being a hedge fund, is their people who get their pension programs, et cetera, are being hurt. Then now United Healthcare has, well, golly gee, we wanted to give our money away to all those poor sick people in hospital beds, but golly gee, we got sued by BlackRock, and now we have to keep it to ourselves.
Yeah. No,
that's how cynical this all could be. It needs to be decentralized.
I don't disagree. And just to reaffirm what you were saying with the white pill, I think that as Christians in this nation, I think for a long time we have sort of been. We've been taught, we've kind of gone along with this glorification of corporations and greed, things that, the Bible as a whole and Christ specifically speak out against over and over and over again.
Don't conflate though.
I'm absolutely going to conflate the rich.
Well, no,
don't conflate what with what?
Well, you're basically saying that all corporations operate on greed. So
yes, it's the profit incentive. It's
literally that's not greed.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Can be.
To make more money?
Well, sure, it can be. Yeah. Of course. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, there can be. The church is a nonprofit corporation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So should we try to lose money?
I think that we should be giving out as much money as possible. Yeah.
Should hospitals be nonprofit?
Look, I understand trying to keep the lights on. Yeah. But when we're talking about corporations that are paying millions and billions of dollars in bonuses to their CEOs, right? Yeah. When they are, again, literally killing people in order to make a profit.
I'm not defending that. What I'm saying is you're painting with a broad brush. I'm saying you're assuming that every corporation is like an evil corporation that just has a bare profit motive. There's a vast
I didn't hear you say that, but is that your opinion?
I think capitalism certainly incentivizes that.
I think
those are the corporations that rise to the top.
Yeah, I think that tends to be. I would say for publicly traded corporations, that is the goal. Now, I'm not going to say that about small businesses run by mom and pop who knows their employee's name and their customers.
Well, yeah, but they both have the same profit motive.
Yeah, they owe something to an investor.
Yeah.
Right. It's called a
So
fiduciary duty.
why do you assume the low? I mean, of course, I agree.
But the mom and
It's not
pop shop is just trying to pay off their debt to the angel investor that fronted them the money, right?
Yeah.
Which is what we call fiduciary duty for maximize shareholder value for these larger companies.
And by the way, the reason that they have to pay back the shareholders so that they don't commit fraud. Right. I mean, there's good reasons that a corporation, if it's invested with money, doesn't just get to run off with the money to Acapulco, the moment it gets it. Like there's SEC regulations for a reason. And so, honest reporting and, it's their goal. But I would agree with you. The whole populist movement, the whole Trumpian movement, which is why you should really think more about it than just outright hatred, is all about.
That's why you think more about socialism.
Is about empowering. Well, actually, the Bernie bros and the Trump bros, there's a lot of overlap because what Trump is actually. I mean, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, literally said, "Wall Street had its fun. Now it's time for Main Street." That is what the Treasury Secretary of the United States has said under the Trump administration. So, not to be nakedly political about it, but but the point is that it was seen. I agree with you. It was seen that increase in stock value was kind of an ultimate good in American life for a good 30 years. And now there's a lot of people rethinking that because it has hollowed out the manufacturing base. It has destroyed communities. And so I think Trump, through his tariffs and other things, many other things, is trying to bring that back.
Do you want to jump to your article?
I was just going to to finish my white pill. Like the whole point was for the church to claim its mission to care for the poor. And we can be creative and innovative in the way that we do that. But I think the more we begin to take that seriously and the more that we begin to own that mission, I think that will do so much to revitalize the church in America.
I agree with you. Do you think the church is competing with the government in those sorts of welfare activities? It's a loaded question.
Yeah, obviously. I think generally no.
Yeah.
Right, like we can have private charity and government assistance.
It's literally the point of a 501c3 is that they don't have to compete.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They can do what
I mean though is that our government spends I think around $200 billion a year total on housing subsidies, things like TANF, food stamps. Kind of the big three, basically feeding, clothing, housing the poor. So it's about 5% of our budget every year. It's a lot of money, hundreds of billions of dollars.
Should be more.
And so, well, you just said the church should do it.
Medicare, Medicaid are the big drivers.
Well, yeah, those aren't included in that.
I know. You said 5%. I was like, there's a much larger elephant in the room.
I'm trying not to include. I'm trying not to include Medicare and Medicaid.
But that's the elephant in the room. It's the big one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they're in the big beautiful bill. And people wanted to include more Medicaid. Mm-hmm. Not funding people who can work and things like that. Okay, but my point is that if you really believe that, then you should also call for a drastic reduction in those government activities. Because what is basically...
I don't think that follows logically, but...
Okay, it follows historically. Because there was a time when essentially all charity was done by Christian organizations, lodges, churches, things of that nature. And over time... with, say, the advent of the welfare state, by and large, the government said, don't worry, we got it taken care of.
Yeah, but I would say...
The poverty rate remains the same, even though we spent trillions of dollars on it.
Yeah,
right.
But like in the 1960s, when we had the most robust welfare system in America, when we were taxing the rich at 90%, it led to the largest growth of the middle class that we've ever seen in our history. It pulled tons of people out of poverty.
That's
like
a
these things
not
do...
causation. You're saying the middle class was developed because money was taken from one group of people and given to another?
I think that when people don't have to worry about meeting their basic needs, when they're able to get higher education for free, when they don't have to worry about when they're not being bankrupted by the medical system, then they have the ability to grow their wealth in ways that they otherwise wouldn't be able to.
I totally agree. But I was going to say, the government took over these responsibilities because nobody else was, right? Back in the 1930s, you had old people dumpster diving in order to survive. So FDR was like, we got to have Social Security.
Now young people do it for fun.
Yeah, some do, right? But I think I think you could make the argument if the church was out there feeding all of the hungry and doing all these things, then they can make an argument. We're doing it. It's not necessary for the government. But to kind of just take it on faith and say the government should stop doing it so that we could do it, I think you got to show us
actually,
first.
what's happened is actually far worse than what I'm even saying, because the government is actually creating more poverty. Right? It's actually destroying the American family. Is what it's doing.
Jerome Powell hates poor people.
Expand.
Artificially low interest rates being artificially low cause inflation when they're combined with deficit spending. And who does that hurt? That doesn't hurt investors.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't hurt investors. It doesn't hurt rich people. Prices just keep going up for the poorest of the poor people, right? Yeah. Like, so the people do keep getting poorer on the lowest margins, even though, like, overall,
the government
the median,
a certain level of unemployment.
the median American wealth is going up, right? And like the lowest of the low have like access to great technology they wouldn't have had before, but rents go up, education goes up, housing goes up. I already said housing. Pharmaceuticals go up. All these things that are regulated by government keep going up and up and up. But okay, but it might be a correlation.
I mean, this is the biggest of all kind of the arguments against welfare. But basically, if you give money to a woman that you would then take away if she were to get married, and you give her more money for having more children, the government is literally telling women to have children out of wedlock and have more of them. And that is exactly what we have seen. In every community where welfare is given, you have fatherless children all over the place.
Right, but you also have...
and the social consequences of that, the social cost of that are actually more than the billions we're spending on the welfare to begin with.
Yeah, they did a study a few years ago, and they found on this one particular day that they just randomly chose that I think it was 20 or 25% of all black men in the poorest 1% were in prison on that day. And so I think, you know, when we talk about welfare going back since the 1980s, that's the stereotype. And I think
I said all races.
Right, yes, yeah. But that's the stereotype. And I think a lot of that problem isn't that the women are like, oh, I'm going to keep my welfare, although I'm sure it happens. But a lot of those men are sitting in prison, and that's the problem. And I'm not saying we shouldn't enforce crime, but I'm saying we have very high recidivism rates. We have problems there. And so if we're serious about the family, I don't think that that's the only solution. I think we got to look at other things as well.
We have a White Pill Radio coming up about prisons.
Yes.
Oh yes,
it's our one-off that's coming up in a couple weeks.
I think that's next Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's keep going. We could do a whole thing about that, and
we did.
Yes. We could do a whole episode about that, as almost all these things. I just want to make this kind of quick. It's something I talk about a lot, and I think maybe we're going to try to do an abortion episode because Josh wants to maybe come back and talk about that. So I'm not going to dwell on this, but let me try to frame this quickly. A lot of states have, like Texas, have outlawed abortion. So now women are using like mifepristone or other drugs to up to 12 weeks basically carry out their own abortion. Some of us think that should be illegal. Some of us think that women who do that should perhaps face, or definitely face, legal consequences for killing their own child. But one of the things, and even, and I've been critical of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump because they're basically like, the mifepristone is fine. We're basically saying various Republicans have argued, 15-week limits. Lindsey Graham tried to get that through at one point. And I'm on the abolitionist side, no abortion anytime for any reason. Anyway, but this was a study. It's being seen by more people. It's put out by EPPC. This is from April 28th, 2025. New study reveals an adverse event rate 22 times higher than FDA-approved drug label reports. In a first-of-its-kind study, the Abortion Pill Harms Women, the Ethics and Public Policy Center, reveals that serious adverse events from mifepristone are approximately 22 more frequent than the Food and Drug Administration currently recognizes. And by the way, a lot of those stories where a woman is like trying to have an abortion and like she went to the ER and things didn't work out and then she dies and then people say it's because of Georgia's abortion law. Mifepristone is the common element in all those stories. Basically, you have women self-administering abortions and something goes terribly wrong. By the way, it's an extremely painful process. It takes 2 or 3 days. It sounds like hell on earth, and I can't believe we allow women to do that to their babies. But that said, this is saying the data on that is really far worse than what the FDA is saying. And related to that is an article from a couple days ago at the Christian Post, which says FDA Commissioner Marty Makary vows to launch review of the abortion drug mifepristone. And basically he's saying, that EPPC article that I just referenced got in front of Marty Makary. And he is saying, we're going to do another test on this. And maybe our test on this weren't so good, and maybe women shouldn't be giving themselves abortion drugs to kill their own children. And I would say hooray, and I would even say hallelujah in the spirit of the previous article.
Yeah. So obviously the solution is to make abortion legal once again, so we don't have to resort to this that harms 10% of the women, assuming the study's correct. And, like I've always said, I think that we really got this wrong. If we're serious about ending abortion, and I would love to have fewer abortions, we need to do the evidence things. Better sexual education, more access to contraception, WIC programs, welfare programs that benefit young mothers with kids. All those, it gives women a light at the end of the tunnel, makes them say, I can do this. Those sort of things, I think, do a lot more than making it illegal, hiding our head in the sand and say we won and pretending it went away.
I do have a question. When you say make it more legal, mifepristone is it's the one that's prescribed for early pregnancies, right? Mm-hmm. This is how Planned Parenthood or other clinics would give you an abortion if you have something lower than like 9 weeks or so.
I don't know. I'm going off of his this is what they're sending in the mail.
Yeah. Forcep or suction abortion, like dilation aspiration or forcep abortion or suction abortions are going to happen much later on, right? So making it legal or illegal, like this is still how they would do early. Are you saying that so that this doesn't happen, we need to have later abortions?
No, I'm not saying
term?
We should have later abortions. Okay. I don't know enough about the topic. You probably know more than I was going off of him saying that we're sending it in the mail, and that's
it is harmful, and the majority of the
it's very harmful to the baby.
And I was going to argue about the are we missing the forest for the trees by looking at the harm done to the woman, which we do need to worry about, but like there is intended harm to
it kills a kid,
another entity. Now, are you guys going to call it a person, a human, a living human being, or are you guys going to call it like
a living human being?
Okay, yeah. Okay, it's a human.
Yes.
Person?
Wow. I kind of say person after about the 20th week or so.
Okay.
So. Yeah, I mean, I kind of absolutely no one is gonna love this. I kind of tend to subscribe to like the biblical view that like there is some kind of moral worth to the fetus, but it is not equivalent to the mother.
Okay.
I mean, I would totally say that makes sense. Let's say some kind of scenario where the week before a woman is supposed to give birth, I don't even know how this, I'm not a doctor, I don't know anything about this stuff, but let's say there's some situation where either the baby can survive or the mom can survive. I would say that the woman that we're looking at should be able to make that decision.
That's like already granted in every, except for the what's it called, the ectopic pregnancies, which are hard to find out, but by the time you do find out you have an ectopic pregnancy, it's already a major problem, in which case oftentimes
and some people don't even think that a woman is pregnant until fertilization, because it takes about 2 weeks from conception to where it goes through the fallopian tube.
Sure. And ectopic pregnancy is when the fertilized egg implants inside the fallopian tube instead of in the uterus.
And that can kill a woman.
It can definitely kill a woman, which is why every single state allows for, what are we even talking about? The situation you brought up, I haven't met a single pro-lifer.
I don't know that it exists.
I haven't met a single pro-lifer that thinks the opposite.
Right. It's an ethical dilemma, and there's no real clear answer. Yeah. But I would say this. Would you be in favor of a law that said that, let's say a woman is 36 weeks pregnant, and it's a dangerous medical situation? Should the law say she has to give birth, or would you say that she has the option to kill the child?
If it's a dangerous situation, I would say she has the option.
Because here's the thing: you can end a pregnancy 2 ways. You can kill the baby, or you can have the baby. Right. And there are some pro-choice activists that basically say the woman has a right to kill the baby.
What do you mean by dangerous situation?
I mean a hypothetical situation where the birth could kill the mother.
Yeah.
Right.
If it's potentially life-threatening, the woman should be able to make that decision.
But there are some people who would say, yeah, but just kill the baby. It's like, well, you could have the baby. In fact, in many cases, I mean, the majority of abortions take place before 20 weeks.
Right.
Viability is 24. These days, it's questionable at 24 weeks, 26 weeks. They kind of have it down pat. But there's not a lot of abortions that take place then. But like, let's say, like, would you be in favor of a law that said, well, actually, this is what Roe v. Wade kind of technically said was viability. They had a anyway. But so would you be in favor of a law that said if the baby is viable, then you have to have the baby?
Yes, except for the life of the mother, or true like danger to the mother. And I'm not talking about like mental health or something. I'm talking about serious life threatening. I would be totally fine with after week 20 or 22.
What if she had the baby and then she couldn't raise it, and so she knew she would have to give it up for adoption, which was damaging to her mental health?
She should be able to give it up for adoption.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, like if viability is the
make these
standard,
arguments.
then
The terminally online people make the mental health argument. I haven't met very many pro-choicers that don't say there's something else going on. That yes, I think it's a child, but if she has mental health, then like she should be able to kill it. Like most of the argument is happening about personhood and not necessarily about like life of the mother, mental health situations.
Last word on this.
Go ahead.
So I. This might be, sorry if this is a long last word. The study itself, looking at the numbers and looking at the way it was conducted, is kind of deeply flawed. There are so they looked at data from like insurance data, right, of like what people went to the doctor for. And so there's like a lot of issues here, right? Like we have no idea if a lot of the things that the study reports were related to the abortion actually are related to the abortion, right? Like a lot of the things, like they list hemorrhaging as 28,000 counts of adverse events. That could easily be explained away by like, well, it was already a difficult pregnancy. That's why they were seeking an abortion. And kind of what you were talking about earlier about like kind of missing the forest for the trees is like, this study to me is like severely flawed. I don't think it really proves anything. And I think, and I keep seeing pro-life people kind of bring up this kind of junk science and misconstruing or like poorly framing certain issues. And I think that like we should just discuss this on the merits, right? Like,
You're right. Let's talk about it philosophically. You should. No parent has the right to kill their child.
I'm just saying, like, if you've got to rely on like a junk science study, like you don't need that, right? Like,
well, you're calling it junk science.
I think
that's exactly what the FDA is seeking to prove. So, aren't you glad they're taking it up?
I am. I just I've got serious problems with this.
And when I said
and I think the argument should stand for itself.
When I said force for the trees, I was saying like we're arguing about the harm to the woman. When like if you do believe it's a human person, there is like a 100% chance of harming this.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, 10% chance of harming the woman. So it's like, I think it's a much deadlier drug than the pro-choicers want to allow by a factor of however many kids you have to add to that number.
No. And to me, like, that's a strong moral argument, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, I have a lot of sympathy for the pro-choice, or for the pro-life position.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. All right. What you got for us next? Something about, speaking of insurance, the big, beautiful bill is going to kick off 11 million people off their health care. How's that going to happen?
Yeah, so it's going to kick 11 million people off their bill several different ways. The bill is very long, but a lot of what's happening in the bill, it seems, is it's cutting programs that benefit poor people in order to give big tax cuts to rich people and spend us into long-term debt that our kids are going to have to pay for, in order to give these rich people tax cuts. And it doesn't sound like the right thing for me to do.
Well, the populists are in favor of raising taxes on the rich.
Yeah, I was excited to hear that. That would be great if they would support it. I don't think I'll see that.
Go from 37% top bracket to 39%.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the big one of the big fights on the right now. I mean, I think there's no way the Republicans are going to pass the bill where they can be accused of raising taxes, even if it is on the rich, because it'll get misconstrued. Let me ask this more philosophically though, because one of the debates going on in like the Senate is basically saying that Medicaid, right, which is sort of healthcare for the poor or disabled or something to that effect. They're saying we need work requirements. This has come up for ever. As long as I've been alive, it seems like we're always looking at the work requirements for, either for welfare benefits or Medicaid benefits or something. So they're trying to say that there are something like 5 million men out there who are receiving Medicaid that are able-bodied.
Right.
I don't know how they know that. That's a talking point I've heard. Do you think that able-bodied men should work? I mean, like, do you think?
Generally, yes.
I mean, so if they did make that cut, and it did cut people off of a Medicaid benefit,
Right.
but they could be working.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking single able-bodied man with no kids. Because certainly I'm all
Sure, if you have
support
to
of the
take care of
kids.
kids or whatever.
Right. Yeah, who aren't disabled in any way. Yeah, sure. I'm totally fine with that.
I mean, I will say that the workforce, it's like has disappeared.
Yeah.
A lot of corporations, a lot of companies, not evil, poor profit corporations. I just mean businesses that employ people. I mean, I will tell you, I have several in my church that run, food operations, and like they have an extremely difficult time finding people, to do the kind of, mid-level job, paying $15, $20 an hour, and where are those people? I think they're getting paid to sit at home. I don't know where they are, but to me, they have to pay rent somehow. They have to have medical care somehow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think most welfare programs should ultimately be designed to help kids, right? That's what my thought is. If we invest in kids, we're investing in future, having less crime, 20, 30 years, having more entrepreneurship, better employees, all those sort of things. So my support of welfare programs is primarily, although not 100%, focused on children. So able-bodied man, I guess you could also make an argument that they are a single dad taking care of their kids as well. And we need much better childcare programs because we end up in this trap where you get a job, you go to work, and you can't afford the childcare, or you're working just for the childcare. But with basically what you're saying, yeah, I would support that.
I want to hear your answer about the from each to each question, from each according to their ability to each according to their need. I want to see how you answer that question.
Yeah. So
Well, he did say that was his worldview in the last episode.
Yeah.
Means testing, Medicaid.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of on principle, I don't think that whether or not somebody is able to live should be tied to how much like value they produce, right? Life is an intrinsically
No one's
good
debating that.
should, yeah. Well, I mean, but that is like what the profit incentive is here, right? Like if you don't work, you don't get access to the things that you need to live.
I mean, Paul said, if you don't work, you do not eat. Do you agree with that?
I would have to look at the specific context of that verse.
Don't be a freeloader.
Right.
If you can work, you have to feed yourself.
Right.
I don't
so
think that.
I'm putting
Vito
that out
Corleone
there.
said, act like a man.
I'm putting that out there as a general principle. I understand the realities of the world.
But don't strawman this particular argument, which is that yes.
I'm not trying to strawman the argument. I'm just letting you know my position so that I can give nuance for like how that applies into the real world.
Okay.
So for this specifically, right, I do generally think that there should be some kind of like work requirement, right? Obviously exceptions need to be made. Like if you're caring for another dependent and you're not able to work, if you have some sort of disability, right? Like all the range of those kind of typical exceptions. One of the things that I am worried about here is that the minimum wage has not kept up with what would be an actual living wage for decades at this point. And I think that there is a danger that needs to be considered of if I am forced to take whatever a company will offer me, right, in order to have access to the things that I need to live, then that gives any company, evil corporations or the kinds of companies that your friends run, too much power over the worker. And so generally I would, I think typically I would like to see a system in which everybody's basic needs are cared for if they are willing to work. But I would also like to see a system where people aren't having to work 80 hours a week, for $7.50 an hour, just so that they don't have to be afraid of losing their Medicare. I think that if you take the profit incentive out of corporations, out of the economy, where people are having to work really the only thing that they would actually need to work, right, which is probably like 20, 30 hours a week and have all of their needs taken care of, I think that solves a lot of the problems here.
Y'all are looking at me.
I mean, you're the one who like asked the question.
Well, the from each to each question, because I honestly had no idea where you would land on that.
Yeah, like trying to apply my like these principles to the realistic situation
I mean, yeah, if you do
of the American economy, right, is difficult. But
yeah, if you do want my thoughts about specifically the minimum wage stuff, is like I don't know a single kid coming out of high school now that is going to work at like a HEB or a like Wendy's or whatever that's making minimum wage, right?
Yeah, they're making double minimum wage.
Right.
which
right.
is still far below what you need to live.
Well, go see my comment earlier about Jerome Powell hating poor people, right? Like inflation, deficit spending from both the Republicans and the Democrats, right? They both spend us into oblivion and do absolutely nothing about interest rates or about like the national debt, which is a snowball on interest rates.
Which is why Elon blew up about the big, beautiful bill.
Right.
In
And-
part.
and
I mean,
going
there's
back
probably
to-
some other stuff going on.
Going back to Republican policy, Dwight D. Eisenhower raised taxes on the richest Americans to 93%. So
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever paid 93%. But
What percent of the tax share, I've already asked you this, so don't spoil it. What percent of the tax share do you guys think is held by the 1%? The burden, right? Because most of our tax burden comes from income tax, right? Some comes from corporation tax, some comes from like what's it called when you die?
estate
Estate taxes. Thank you.
Or inheritance.
Some of it comes from inheritance taxes or estate taxes, but like the majority comes from individual income taxes and Social Security and Medicare taxes. What percent of that burden do you think is held by the 1%?
I'm sure it's something high.
Like what percent of the pay their fair share? What percent of their share do you think they're paying? Right?
I think it's I used to know this. I think it's like 35%.
Yeah. Like carried by 1%
yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a
The idea that our progressive income tax doesn't tax the rich is insane.
right.
Right.
Now
Yeah,
if
but
you
they
look at
still own
50% of
80%
Americans
of
don't
the
pay
wealth,
any
right?
tax at
Like
all.
that.
and when it was 90%, accountants like me found
Yes.
loopholes to get
Yes.
them out of it.
And they
Like,
still do,
No,
yes.
the dirty secret of the 90% is that nobody paid it.
right.
Yeah.
Like nobody paid the 90%
Right.
back then.
Yeah. But I would say
So there should
I
be
get
no
what
problem
you're
reinstating it, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but the next question would be, what percentage of the wealth does the 1% hold? And so that would be what we
Well,
need to
wealth
compare.
inequality is a different question. Yeah.
Yeah. But it expanded under, say, Obama. for
Oh,
example.
certainly. Yeah.
So and the Trumpian movement again. I mean, I'll say this again. You guys should really look into it and really think about it. Is actually about restoring wealth to the middle class. I mean, Batya Unger Sargon, I know I quote her all the time, but she became a Trump fan because she is for the working class.
Yeah.
And she is saying that the left screws the middle class. The left is in bed with all the big money, big pharma, big insurance.
I
big
hear
banks.
that.
Sometimes,
So I hear
sometimes
that.
a guy with golden toilets tells you can only have 2 dolls instead of 12 for Christmas.
No, I don't think that's what he was saying.
Right.
Listen, here's the thing: is I don't disagree with most Trump
I
supporters.
can't let that hang. I got to come back to that.
Okay, come back.
I think you guys are identifying the right problems. I just don't think that you guys are enacting the right solutions. And you keep saying the left, and like we need to distinguish between Democrats and like
Anarchists?
leftist progressives.
They're not leftists.
Like they are,
Yeah.
like there is a difference there, and I definitely
Okay.
agree that Democrats are in bed with corporations, just as Republicans are. And I'm not sure how Trump's bill here does anything to actually help the middle class.
Right.
Well, it's not really. I
I don't know how it brings the wealth back down to them.
It's not really a spinning bill. Because it makes his middle class tax cuts permanent.
right. I think that Trump
Right, but how
says
does that
the
bring the
right
wealth
things.
back down to the middle
Or
class?
it extends them. I actually don't
But-
know if it makes them permanent.
More spending with tax cuts is deficit spending. Deficit spending
I-
leads to inflation.
I am in favor of Elon and Ron Johnson and critics of this bill saying it doesn't work because it's too much deficit. I am opposed to deficit spending. I don't know why Trump doesn't figure out a way to get us to a balanced budget soon. I don't know why he's so stubborn on that. It seems like it's impossible. It's an extreme frustration of mine. I basically hate the Republican Party. So
You wanted to come back on the doll thing. You had a different.
Yeah.
Was
No,
it
so I
quality
think-
over quantity or what?
No, I think that
They're better quality
and-
dolls or
No, I think that Trump never should have said that because it's a soundbite that could perhaps live in infamy.
from a dude with golden toilets.
But he earned those golden toilets, But I would say that there's a lot of cheap, product on the shelf. That is cheap. It doesn't last. The kind of almost every consumer toy you've ever bought your kids.
So
at
it was a higher
Christmas.
quality statement. You think?
Well, I think in part, I don't think he was saying you'll be limited in how much you can buy. I think what he was saying is you may have limits in what will actually be on the shelf for you to choose. There will be more than enough dolls for you to choose. There'll be more than you can have as many dolls as you want, but there may not be the options because
two types of dolls rather than Bernie Sanders. We have too many deodorants on the shelf. There should only be 2 brands of deodorant. Yeah, every time he goes to the supermarket, he's like, why are there so many brands of the same thing? Like, yeah.
I mean,
I mean, it's a Bernie point that you were saying.
I'm not a consumer.
You're saying there's overlap between Bernie and MAGA, so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what I'm saying is that I think it is a reality that given the policy we were on a path with China at that time, that it may be that China's not going to play ball. China will be like, oh, we're not going to make your dolls anymore. We're not going to make this anymore. We're not going to make that. I mean, they're frantically trying to figure out how to get, because China does all of like our ball bearings, like a lot of magnetic processing, for a lot of magnets and stuff like that. We don't do that anymore. That's part of the whole point, is to bring the supply chain back here so that we're not dependent on, China for some very important things. So I think what he's saying is, I don't think he was preaching an age of austerity. I think what he was saying is that you'll still have a doll. You still can buy a doll. It'll be an American-made doll. It'll be an American company. It'll be manufactured in America. And so there may be 3 or 4 doll-making companies in America. And right now you can buy from 10 types of dolls. And so maybe that is a change. But I think most Americans, if you ask them, would you rather have 4 dolls to choose from that are all made in America, or 10 dolls, 6 of which are made in China, or something like that?
I think if you ask them, they'd answer one way, but I think they behave a different way.
Yes.
That may be true, but I think that we could see if there could ever be a made in America version of Amazon. It's kind of, I think of like iTunes. Remember when, y'all might be too young, but Napster and file sharing was a thing, and everybody was getting music for free, but it was like illegal. Then they arrested, like Metallica went after some kid, and then all of a sudden, what comes out? Like 99-cent songs on iTunes. I don't even know if iTunes exists. I guess it's Apple Music now, but they stream now. But, in the day, it was like, whoa, you can get a song for 99 cents. And even though you could still kind of do file sharing through a whole bunch of other programs, people just like moved to buy it for 99 cents. So I do think that people will make a choice to do the right thing. If there's a possible legal consequence of doing the wrong thing in that case. But in this case of like helping American entrepreneurs, I think people would do it. I think if there was a made in America version of Amazon, I think it'd be very popular. And people are trying to do that.
Yeah, I would think that if it was so popular, it probably would have been done.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, I don't know. Made in America also is a phrase fraught with difficulty.
Well, because, your constituent components might be made somewhere else. Right. I mean, we're having this conversation about bananas like last week, which is we can't grow bananas here. Why is there a 10% tariff on them?
Well, and I don't think the tariffs would apply to things like bananas and coffee.
They currently are, but okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that may be.
It's across the board 10%, but yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Bananas are still nature's perfect food, and we should eat them. Okay, I got the last article is mine.
Yay!
We're like over time, so I'll go fast.
I love it when they go long.
Only. Well, I do too. Like, I don't think we should be restrained to an hour. I mean, if Joe Rogan could do it for 3 hours, we can do it for 2.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They got the attention.
Do y'all have time?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm good.
I have time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so this article is actually a couple weeks old now, and it feels like a lot has changed since then. I probably even wrote it 3 or 4 weeks ago. But basically, my argument is that Trump is doing good things for the country. I make an argument for 3 things in particular that he's doing good. I see him as a problem solver. And Elon Musk, of course, they've blown up now, but at the time they were still friends. I see him largely in the same way. That people are often mad that they're not as mad as you are about the problem, but in fact, he's trying to solve the problem. And I think in many respects, he is fighting 100-front war. There are so many problems in this country and on the global stage that Trump is doing everything he can to try to fix as many problems as quickly as he can. So basically, he does things that I would think that any rational, sane person would give him praise for, but because the Trump hatred is so much that it just can't be done, it won't be done, and I think that's unfortunate for our country because it increases balkanization and fracturization of our country. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. And so I give 3 examples. He closed the border. He has this plan to lower prescription drug costs. That I'll say is a little bit more speculative right now. I don't know. He does need a law, I think, to do that to make pharmaceutical companies basically regard America as most favored nation status so that we can get Ozempic for the same price that, the Netherlands gets for it, which is like a quarter of what we're paying. That's the sort of thing Bernie Sanders was championing. And now that, RFK and Trump are saying this is what we're going to do with prescription drugs to lower costs. This, by the way, gets back to all that insurance conversation as well. I don't hear anyone on the left saying that's a great thing. And so that strikes me as odd. And then he goes over to Saudi Arabia, which, yes, I'm a little bit torn the way that he's, did the Middle Eastern, he went to Qatar, went to UAE, went to Saudi Arabia. And, look, these are not in many respects our ideological friends, but they're sort of becoming moderate, modern, Muslims in a world where terrorism remains a problem, where you still have the Gaza war going on. And he humiliated, the neocons and the nation builders during that speech. It was an extremely powerful speech where he went against this Reagan's 11th commandment to not speak against other Republicans, and he humiliated the Bushes on the world stage. And I would think for liberals that basically spent the entire aughts saying George Bush is an evil person, he's Darth Vader, he's Hitler, all rolled into one. Also, he's really stupid. He's an evil genius, and he's really stupid. And the worst person of all is Dick Cheney, but we love his daughter now. I would think that they would be like, yeah, I agree with all this. Biden didn't run on having an open border, and then we got it, and so Trump has closed the border basically overnight. That's a good thing. So I would think that these would be national wins. I throw out also the tariff and protectionist policies. I think are good things. I think a lot of the things that HHS could be. It could be amazing, although there are some things not happening that I'm not happy with either. So yeah, so basically that was my question, which is why aren't people happy about this? These are national wins. They're good for our country. We need to learn how to give credit to the other side when they do good things for our country. And if y'all can point out things that Biden did for our country that are good, for example, that I would do the same.
Yeah. I would say the thing that I think Trump did good was getting rid of the penny. I think that was actually.
Come on, you can do better than that.
But
what do you have against the penny?
Do I?
Have we actually done that?
Yeah, the only
Apparently it's
pennies
gonna
we make
happen.
are ceremonial now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
So what? How do we? Is it gonna? Are prices gonna raise up to?
We should get rid of
5%?
nickels too.
Probably so. Yeah.
It's gonna-
Inflation
it is
means
round
it's
up.
more to mint them than to
Right.
yeah.
No,
than they're
like a
worth.
penny costs 3 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Right.
it just rounds up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, 1964 quarters are made of silver. So if you can ever find one,
But,
it's
I
worth
mean,
about $2 or $3.
You can still round to 2 on a credit card transaction, right? I mean, it's not. It doesn't affect digital at all. You still do pennies on digital currency.
Yeah.
So,
No. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, but that's
Sure.
Right. Well,
you think like closed border penny.
So you mentioned 3 things, possibly 4 if you want to include tariffs in the Bernie's pro-tariff point. 1, closed border. 2, pharma price controls. 3, that Saudi Arabia speech, and then maybe 4 if you do tariffs. But and you were saying that if you don't see these, if you cannot praise him for all these good things, you're being absurd in your intransigence and
You have
stubbornness.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Well, even more, he said stubbornness and intransigence, right?
Yes.
Right? You should be
I
called
would-
out.
I would say that's intransigent.
If you think these are good things and you don't give Trump credit for them, but what if we don't think they're good things? Right? I'm an open borders guy, so strike number 1 off the list. I don't think price controls are good.
Wait, let's stop.
Sure,
so
sure.
you would say the Biden open border policy was a good thing.
I have called you out on saying it's an open border policy. Now, he failed to secure the border, but that's different than an open border. He deported millions of people.
Okay, so
he deported more people during his presidency
Than Trump did
during the
earlier.
first term.
Yeah. But,
Okay,
So I don't think
that's
you're
word-
giving
that's-
him enough
that's
credit.
Wordplay. That's wordplay.
But
I
more,
think you're
well, the problem is
focusing
more
on the
came in.
problems, Evan.
Stop.
The problem is more came in, though. Right? That's the problem with that.
What they mean when Obama's deporter in chief is he stopped people at the border, then turned around and right at the border and sent them home.
But
so it's wordplay.
But either way, well, so is saying that Obama.
I mean, do you agree with what Biden did on the border?
From what I understand of the border, he recognized the problem that turning people away at the border, they just came back, right? And so he tried to create, and he actually kept Title 42 for the first 2 years of his presidency. And then after that, he
That
tried
just
to
dealt with
use...
COVID.
Yeah, right. But he tried to use this kind of carrot stick method of okay, we're going to create more pathways of legal citizenship for you to come in, using the now infamous app, right? Yeah. Look, I don't think he did a perfect job on the border.
Which
I think it was
border
still
policy is better? The one where where no one comes across the border, or the one where 10 million people at least come across in 4 years?
So let's be clear about what we're
Just
talking
answer
about,
the
right?
question.
Things are still crossing the border, right? We still have trade, we still have like tourism and such.
That has nothing to do with this conversation at all.
It kind of does actually.
No, it doesn't.
But
I didn't mean to get sidetracked on the border. I was asking, like, what if we don't like these things? That was my question.
Yeah, I think giving an option to asylum seekers instead of ending the asylum program and ending refugee programs is generally better and fits more with my Christian values.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Giving asylum seekers and refugees an option for citizenship.
So a pathway
to citizenship.
So you would say we should have the Biden?
Yes,
policy.
that is more in line.
I
with
mean,
my
that's for the
Christian
audience to
values.
decide if they think that's a good thing or not.
Yeah,
I think it's an obvious win that the border is closed. Okay, now as to your question, so you want higher prescription drug prices?
I don't want price controls on big pharma.
But is that an option?
Wait. Okay. So you always accuse people here, like in the article, of saying, like, well, you don't have a solution, right? It was Trump's Rand Paul tweet. We're saying you always vote no, but you don't have a solution, right? No, my solution for pharma is just to do nothing, right? It's don't grant government monopolies to pharma companies, right? I think we have a serious IP law, intellectual property law problem in our country.
We
Right?
have pharmaceutical monopolies?
Can I go down to Mexico and get their cheap insulin and sell it here? No.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Like we have monopolies on specific.
So you
Like,
probably
patents are government granted monopolies, is what I'm saying, right?
So you don't agree with the protection of intellectual property?
I think that there are trade-offs, right? We exist not in the world of the perfect, but the world of trade-offs, right? Thomas Sowell. I think that the costs of granting all these company monopolies is greater than the cost of not giving them the protection for R&D, right? Okay. There are trade-offs. There's always going to be trade-offs, right? But I think where you're allowed to piggyback off of somebody's idea is much better than a world where the government grants you monopoly and you're the only one that's allowed to build this thing and the only one able to piggyback off of your own innovations, right? There's going to be a hit to innovation for the first movers, but in a decentralized world, which you claimed to be for earlier, which would be a world without, I would say the most decentralized would be a world without intellectual property where you can piggyback off of anyone's ideas to keep building something better.
Yeah. But the other side, the downside of that would be that if you don't protect someone's intellectual property, they won't create in the first place.
Which is the downside of the R&D, right? There's trade-offs. There are trade-offs.
And I don't even know if that's entirely true because like so much of R&D is like, I mean, the internet, right? Like that was invented by the government, not necessarily like looking to do, by a bunch of corporations trying to do innovation. And there's, especially in the medical industry, like there are all types, like most of the unique chemical compounds, I think that's the proper term for it, that get created or discovered are by like these poor grad students who get like absolutely no profit out of it simply because they want to make the world a better place. The inventor of the polio vaccine, the inventor of insulin, all these people were doing it simply because they saw the suffering or they were affected by the suffering and they wanted to do something about it. And so especially in the medical industry, I agree with you here.
But I agree with you, there are trade-offs.
We need to have a whole conversation about the polio vaccine.
The first mover advantage is taken away, right? If you remove that R&D. But I think the second, third, fourth, fifth mover advantage is probably
so let me reframe.
Outweighs that, yeah.
Putting aside libertarian possible worlds and ideals, in the world in which we live, in which Trump's choice is to do a thing which would mean that we pay the same amount for drugs that people around the world pay, or we pay more for the same drug, which one is better?
Can I respond with rent control? Because it's the same thing. Would you rather pay more for an apartment or less for an apartment, right? In this world, what is this going to do to supply and demand, right? If you price control something at the current world, at the current standard that we live at, what do supply and demand curves do, right?
So people
increase quantity supply. Yeah, increase quantity supply. Then what are you doing? Where do you move the equilibrium?
Do you think that's what's happening? So you think what's happening is that the pharmaceutical company is doing what they're making us pay more for the same drug to offset losses in their country or I'm trying to figure this out.
No, but they're going to sell it to other countries at those same prices, right?
Right.
Like the Nordic countries that you were mentioning, right?
Yeah.
The reason why they sell here to make their money and then they sell over there
So you're okay with that?
is, well, because they have excess, but they need to recoup that original cost, right? No, what do you mean, so you're okay with that? This is a lose-lose situation for somebody like me.
Yeah.
Right? Like this, either way. I didn't want to
Okay,
get on the
I'm
border.
dealing-
I didn't want to get on pharma. I wanted to go to Saudi Arabia
Okay.
and nation building.
I'm dealing in the world of realpolitik, where I'm saying that
But we'll never get through these.
we elect a person to act on our behalf. I feel like, according to the left's own standards, he is doing that, and the right is happy with what he's doing as well. But yet he can't be happy. Josh says he wants a wide open border. He wants millions of people pouring into our country every year, even though we don't know who they are. He liked that.
I didn't say
policy.
unvetted.
Well, they
When did
weren't.
I-
They
when did I
weren't. They
ever
weren't
say-
I said
vetted.
that.
Of course we vet asylum seekers.
Okay, you want unvetted.
I said an open
okay,
border.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll let the audience decide what they would like.
Right.
But okay, but none of us here were in favor, at least anymore, of the Iraq War or the Afghanistan War, right?
Syria, Somalia, right? Like those Iraq, Syria, Somalia, the countries that we're still in right now and have been for the 2016 through 2020 and currently.
I'm happy that we get out of all those.
Are we out?
It's just difficult for me to take Trump
Are we nation
seriously.
building?
It's tough for me to take Trump seriously on that when he's talking about like invading Greenland and making a Riviera out of, Gaza. Like, words are words, actions are actions. I've said the exact same thing for like Democrat politicians as well. Look, if he truly is done with nation building, sure, I'll give him that win. The thing that I like,
You don't think he actually wants to build Greenland, do you?
no, but I think the thing that like
60,000
I
people
think the
live
thing that you fail to appreciate when responding to like people who have criticism for Trump is that like, okay, cool, he's bringing down the prescription drug costs. His bill is going to kick 11 million people off of insurance. Yeah, we have a closed border, but now we are like violating civil rights and due process and
What 11
deporting
million
innocent
people?
people.
Are those the 11 million people you're talking about?
11 million people
The-
are going to be kicked off of
whatever
insurance.
Insurance? Or
Yeah.
they're getting kicked off of private insurance?
They're going to lose their insurance.
Yeah.
The reason they're on Medicaid is
say
because
if
they
the
can't get any other kind of insurance.
I would say if the mephistoprone data is subject to scrutiny, that number is as well.
Okay, sure, fine. The point is that like the way I see this is like the house is burning down and Trump is mowing the lawn and you're mad at us for not giving him credit for that. Like, okay, sure, fine.
house is burning
There are much bigger issues and a lot of them are issues that he is creating.
Like what?
So, like the tariffs that are sending our economy into a downward spin, the fact that he got rid of DEI, which is directly going to hurt families, veterans, people with disabilities, the fact that he's getting rid of or completely gutting regulatory agencies that protect consumers, the fact that
There are good sides
he is
to all of
violating
those
people's
things.
due rights.
You
and
beg
deporting
the
innocent
question. You
people
beg the
to-
question. You beg the question on every one of them. You're making assertions. You're not making arguments. We don't have time to make arguments on all those things.
I'm talking
just
about
gonna-
all of the ways in which he is causing
From your point
harm.
of view, you think DEI does good. I think it does harm. It's just an assertion. It's not an argument.
Do you think people should have wheelchair ramps?
That's the ADA. That has nothing to do with anything.
That is DEI.
No, it is not. No, it is not. DEI is preferential treatment.
how
which,
is-
by the way, the
how is
Supreme
it
Court,
DEI?
The Supreme Court just ruled against you 9-0 with Ketanji Brown Jackson writing the opinion that a woman who is discriminated against in hiring against gay men, they ruled in her favor. That
Not
she has
necessarily
no
about DEI
privilege
either,
to
but
work.
how are wheelchair ramps DEI?
Accessibility.
But explain.
So like, if a building doesn't have a wheelchair ramp, it's less accessible to somebody whose disability causes them to use a wheelchair.
You're
right?
saying that's the I, the inclusion part.
So everybody kind of forgets this.
Like-
It's DEAI. Accessibility is a
Oh, okay.
part of that
Okay.
component. Yeah. But that also includes like, opening candidate pools to veterans, right? Like that's why whenever you apply to a job, it asks that little question of if you're a veteran or not, right? Like that is, I would say, an objectively good thing. And people are going to be hurt because we've gotten rid of that, especially veterans.
Well, I'll just say that-
DEI in principle, I'm kind of fine with. Like, I mean, like Mike Pence was essentially a DEI candidate
Yeah.
for because Trump did not have the evangelical support until he got Mike Pence,
Right.
and now he can't lose any support. But like I'm okay with DEI in practice, just not in policy. Right?
Sure.
I don't want to encode it in policy.
That's a small part of my
Sure.
argument. We can disagree with that, and I still stand by everything else that I said, and would add more if I wasn't going to take up too much time.
Yeah. So my thought on this, this Trump derangement syndrome thing, it's that Trump, maybe he saw some things, but then he creates something else on the other side of it, right? So yeah, the border numbers have come down, but now, Jose down the street, who I went to elementary school with, is in danger of ICE showing up and taking him away. We're like going after like our friends and neighbors who we've known for our whole life, who go to our churches, who's pledged allegiance to our flag their whole life, all that sort of thing. You've got the DEI thing. I think in many ways, universities, a lot of things went too woke, right? Went too far. But now we're going so far the other way. We're taking funding from research programs that fight against cancer. We're kicking international students out of our schools. We're like doing these things in our universities where like they're trying to make us hire people specifically because they're conservative, which is like a reverse DEI program. They're trying to determine what professors can teach in their classes. We're seeing all this sort of thing. On the international relations, I'm totally cool with doing away with the old Bush way of doing things, but we're replacing it with this like loyalty to Trump kind of thing, where if you build something for him or if you buy his coin or whatever, then you get special favors. But if you don't, then he's going against you. And it's this loyalty thing. Like the thing with Elon Musk where he gave all these contracts to Elon Musk, and now he's talking about getting SpaceX out of the government, not because SpaceX is good or bad, but because he has a personal disagreement with the man who runs it.
I don't think that's what's happening.
That's what it seemed like yesterday.
The timing is awful.
Well, of course they're related. What he was saying is that Musk is acting unhinged, and he's threatening to not give food to the people in ISS.
Right.
So if he's not trustworthy to give American astronauts food on the ISS, then we're going to take that. By the way, apparently NASA can't feed its own people on the ISS, which is a shame. But we got to end. So
I think that's the Trump derangement syndrome. Is when he does something good, he pushes too far in the opposite direction.
It's always going to be the art of an imperfect. And there's always going to be trade-offs and whatnot. All I'm saying is that to me, it's pretty obvious that a closed border is a net good. And y'all are all saying
the penny is a net good.
I did read 74 Everyman articles during lunch, just the headlines that were written by you, and I didn't see a single positive.
I don't write all of them.
No, the ones that had Evan, right? I specifically looked in the past couple of years with headlines. I only got 74 deep before I had to come back.
I haven't written that many.
You had. You've written so many Everyman commentary articles.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't see a single positive headline about Biden, right? But does that mean that you are being...
I said I'd be open to suggestions.
But what I'm saying is you did not offer one, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean you're being absurd in your stubbornness and intransigence? I
Maybe.
just wish you would grant others the same...
Tell me 3 things Biden did for this country.
It's going to sound like
tell me.
It's going to sound like you talking to me about Trump, right? Because you don't think they're good things.
I mean, I'm open. I'm also
the things you think are good. I don't necessarily.
I mean, I think about
Biden also wanted to bring down prescription drug. Also brought down prescription drug costs.
Did he?
Yes.
He brought them down?
Yes.
How?
It was for Medicaid recipients, and I think it was mostly like insulin. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing.
Okay, cool.
See, I'm not stubborn or intransigent. Okay.
Well, and he said the penny. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I heard you. Okay, Cody, where can people find you? You didn't say this earlier, so you got to double down now.
I'm on TikTok, CODYPOGUE. So.
All right. Cool. And you're not telling us anything?
I'm Ken. I'm an accountant. I'm not telling you jokers where I work.
Will you be here Tuesday?
I will absolutely be here Tuesday.
Right. Well, this will come out tonight. So, okay.
I am Josh Crawford. You can find me at The Real Crawdad on Instagram. I'm also going to be starting a TikTok under the same name. Happy Pride Month, Free Palestine.
And REEL?
REEL, yes.
Crawdad.
Oh,
okay.
Real. Okay.
The real, like
gotcha,
fishing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The other one was taken.
And I'm Evan McClanahan. I'm the pastor at First Lutheran. I make them nervous every time I say that. flhouston.org. Check us out. Anyway, until next time, we encourage you to think free. What?
It's your slogan, man.
Yeah. Think deeply,
Drink deeply.
question freely, and disagree as needed. I think. Anyway, see you next time.
Peace.